is currently enclosed inside of it, and it's 17 feet in diameter. It protects the satellite from aerodynamic heating, loads, and contamination during the ascent portion of the mission. But once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison those fairing halves back to Earth while the second stage continues to take the satellite into orbit. The fairing halves that we're using today are brand new, and we will be attempting to recover them using our recovery ships, Miss Tree and Miss Chief. However, we aren't planning a catch attempt today, and instead we'll scoop these out of the water later on this evening. Now, finally, next to the rocket is that large truss structure that we refer to as the Transporter Erector, or TE. The TE rolls Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raises it to the vertical launch position, and also routes power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and satellite.
Good afternoon. I'm John Insberger, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. We're coming up on 9.5 minutes to launch, and to get to this point, we rolled Falcon 9 out to the pad Sunday night, about 41 hours before launch. We went vertical on the pad at roughly 10 a.m. local time yesterday. The chief engineer held his technical poll at T-1 hours, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go, no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. The vehicle is healthy. We are currently working, no issues. Now, if we do have to call a hold on today's launch, we have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 3:51 Eastern Time in the afternoon. That's about 4 minutes earlier than today's opening of the window. Now, right now, we're targeting the end of the window just after 16:10 Eastern Time for liftoff. Now, after the go-no-go polls, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. It began at T-minus 35 minutes. We began with fuel going into both the first and second stage, oxidizer into the first stage. For fuel, we use a refined form of kerosene known as RP1, rocket propellant grade 1. Our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid oxygen, and we call that LOX. Now, currently, the second stage that you can see outlined with that gray paint that Shiva mentioned, that fuel is completely loaded. We're still loading fuel on the first stage. That'll go until T-minus 6 minutes. And as you can see from the plume streaming off of the first and second stage LOX tanks, we are continuing to load liquid oxygen onto both of those stages right now. We're also loading helium gas on board storage vessels on the first and second stage. The Falcon 9 uses helium gas as a pressurant in the fuel and the LOX tanks. As the Merlin engine pumps pull RP1 and LOX out of the tanks, we have to fill the empty volume, what we call ullage, with helium that is heated by the engine. Heating the helium helps expand it to fill the tanks. Now at T-minus 7 minutes coming up here, engine chill will begin. We'll hear that call out. This is where we allow a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen to flow past the turbopump inlets. That cools them down to avoid thermal shocks when we light the Merlin engines at T-minus 2 seconds. Finally, you can see to the left of the rocket is the transport erector, or what we also call the strongback. That will retract away from the rocket about 2 degrees at T-minus 4 minutes. That gives the necessary clearance for Falcon 9 to begin the liftoff sequence. Now, on top of Falcon 9, we have the spacecraft. The spacecraft team has transitioned the GPS satellite to internal battery power. That happened at T-minus 15 minutes. They're working no issues, and there are no further actions required of the satellite before launch. We're launching out of the eastern range. Currently, the range is go. They're ready to support. The air and the sea space is clear around us. They've also been launching the balloons for us to help get the weather. The weather from clouds, lightning, electric fields right now is go. What we've been watching is the upper altitude winds. The gradient from one altitude to the other has been borderline where we might exceed the load capability of the Falcon 9. We are currently go. We will get one last weather balloon piece of data coming up here in a couple of minutes. But right now, all systems continue to be go for a liftoff just after 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, today's mission is for the United States Space Force, and we're launching the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 3 as our payload. Now we'll hear from Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Sullivan, material leader of the GPS-3 space vehicles, and Tanya Ladwig, acting Vice President of Navigation Systems at Lockheed Martin, to learn more about today's satellite.
We use GPS every day. Today, everyone has GPS technology in their pocket.
А, вот наш. Так,
25 years of space-based position, navigation, and timing, supporting the entire world.
GPS touches the lives of everyday people all the time.
Минут 10 я точно.
Today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 3 mission is dedicated by the Space Force to the memory of Colonel Thomas Falserano, and we will hear directly from General Raymond and others who knew and worked with him just before we enter our first coast phase later on in the broadcast. Now, we're currently just inside 4 minutes from liftoff. We did get the good news just a moment ago that the latest weather balloon is go for launch, so we're going to continue to count down. We've begun retracting the transporter erector strongback away from the Falcon 9. You can see it on your screen. Moves back a couple of degrees to get us ready for liftoff. Now, the Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The vehicle remains in good health. Fuel loading is complete on both the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen loading will wrap up shortly on the first stage and will complete at T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. At 1 minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup. That means the rocket's own internal computers on first and second stage are controlling the launch countdown. The GPS-3 space vehicle continues to be go. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. The weather has turned green for us here in the last minutes, and the range continues to be green for launch. Now again, as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we have a backup opportunity at 3:51 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
First stage LOX load complete.
Launch director has just called out that the first stage LOX load is complete. We're now loading just liquid oxygen on the second stage. In approximately half a minute, LOX loading should complete on stage 2. T-minus 2 minutes. That announcement tells us that that chill-in that we began at T-minus 7 minutes has lasted long enough. And we are good for the ignition sequence on the Merlin engines coming up in just over a minute and 40 seconds. Now, coming up in the background, you can see some white plumes coming off of the strongback.
Yes, close up to started.
There's a nice view. We have completed loading the second stage. We're now draining the liquid oxygen out of the plumbing that goes up that structure alongside the rocket. And as we vent off the gas, you get that nice long plume you see there where that humid Florida air meets the ultra-cold gaseous oxygen, condenses, giving you that nice white fog. That's normal for this point in the count.
Falcon's in startup. AFTS configured for flight.
Launch director is announced. We're inside of a minute. We are in startup on the flight computers. We are also beginning to pressurize stage 1 and stage 2 for launch.
Mission directors go for launch.
We've heard the final call-outs. Mission director, launch director are go for launch. So at T-minus 30 seconds coming up, all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with GPS 3 space vehicle number 3.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Go Falcon, go GPS.
Vehicle is pushing down range. Chamber pressure down on.
T plus 40 seconds, we've heard callouts, and now we're entering the throttle bucket. We're powering down the Merlin engines to relieve the acceleration as we get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket, now we're beginning to power back up. We hear the call out exiting throttle bucket, the 9 Merlin 1D engines
Mach
going
1.
back to full power, and we are now supersonic.
Max Q.
Guidance engineer calls out max Q, the period of maximum dynamic pressure, or Q, on the vehicle. From this point forward, although we go faster and faster, the thinner atmosphere will put less loads on the airframe of the rocket. Coming up next is chill-in of the upper stage engine. We've got a good trajectory.
And back engine chill started.
We've begun the chill-in of the upper stage engine. Power on the Merlin 1D engines looks good. Avionics reports everything is nominal. And we're T plus 2 minutes into flight. Next major activity in half a minute, shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines, separate the first and second stage, and ignite the second stage engine to carry GPS and the second stage into the first of 2 orbits today. This one will be the initial parking orbit. Falcon 9 preparing for MECO.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And we've confirmed ignition of the second stage engine after a good stage 1, stage 2 SEP. You could see briefly the Falcon 9 first stage in the background.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Call out that both vehicles are following the planned trajectory. First stage continuing to coast to apogee, where it'll then slowly turn around and descend back to the drone ship for landing in the Atlantic Ocean. The second stage engine beginning the long burn to get it into the parking orbit.
Acquisition of signal, Maryland.
Coming up, fairing deploy. Waiting to see the camera switch forward.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And we've got fairing separation. The 2 halves of the Falcon 9 fairing separating, the pneumatic system unlatching the locks that hold it together, and then the pneumatic pushers separating the 2 halves. As the fairing falls away from the vehicle, we can see on the left side of the screen the grid fins, the large titanium castings that are mounted to the first stage, have deployed. They'll be used later as we come back into the atmosphere for precision guidance of the first stage to land on the drone ship. On the right-hand side, we see the second stage engine continuing to burn. It's at full power. Everything's looking good with the trajectory. So at just past T plus 4 minutes into flight, everything is go on the flight of Falcon 9 with GPS 3, space vehicle number 3.
T plus 4 minutes and 25 seconds into flight. We're currently in the first of 2 planned Merlin vacuum engine burns. Currently looking at the data, the second stage engine burn is nominal. On your left-hand screen, you can see the first stage as it's performing that reorientation that John and I talked about. The grid fins are deployed, and you're seeing some thruster plumes there from the attitude control system that are getting it ready so that the 9 Merlin 1D engines are pointed towards the atmosphere as it re-enters into Earth's atmosphere. Beautiful views of the planet beneath both the first stage and the second stage. Second stage is continuing into its burn. We're expecting this burn
Both
to
vehicles
last
continue to
about
follow nominal
5 minutes and 15 seconds. And entry burn will actually begin on the first stage in just about a minute from now. During the entry burn, we'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That'll give us a chance to slow down the stage as it ends up re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and reduce the aerodynamic loads as it starts to bite into the thicker parts of the air around our planet. You can see the Merlin vacuum engine on your right-hand screen, the nozzle extension there growing red hot. That's expected. We're really, we have such a long nozzle extension on there to try to get the most performance out of the pressure coming out of the thrust chamber on the second stage engine. So coming up here in about 15 seconds is entry burn. Watch for that on your left-hand screen. That'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines, while second stage continues to burn towards that elliptical orbit with the GPS vehicle on board.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
There's successful ignition of the 3 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. We're expecting this burn to last just about 30 seconds.
Блять, пиздец, нихуя с 4 роторов пуфик не угревается. Ебанут.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
You see some bursts there. Successful shutdown of the engine and some attitude control bursts just to get that orientation right. Now, once we get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere where those grid fins have some aerodynamic control authority, they will do most of the guiding to take the first stage towards our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions, which is about 350 nautical miles off the east coast of Florida. Coming up at about 50 seconds from now, we'll have 2 events happening about the same time. The first stage will ignite its single center Merlin 1D engine for landing burn. About the same time, the second stage will perform secondary engine cutoff.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Or SECO number 1. Now, while those 2 things occur, about 25 seconds later, the first stage will hopefully touch down on our drone ship. In between, they're deploying its landing legs. So watch for that on your left-hand screen.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Drone ship AOS. Stage 1 landing burn is starting.
Ignition of that center Merlin engine on the first stage.
SECO 1.
Successful confirmation of shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine. The guidance engineer is evaluating the orbit of the second stage now.
Nominal parking orbit.
Nominal parking orbit,
Landing
that's exactly what we
deployed.
want to hear. Landing leg deployment looks like right down the center.
And
Looks
stage
like
1
a
is
successful
landed.
landing.
Recovery operators move into
I see it first stage. Excellent. So that's, you know, we first flew Falcon 9 10 years ago, actually this month. Since then, it's completed 88 missions, and now the most flown operational rocket in the United States. This mission completed its first landing, and hopefully we'll have many more to come. The vehicle is now, we're actually going to enter into our first coast phase, now that we know that the second stage is in a successful parking orbit. That coast phase will last about 54 minutes and will end with our second stage relight at about T plus 1 hour and 3 minutes. We're going to come back shortly before that to cover the second engine start number 2. Now, as we had mentioned earlier, today's mission is dedicated by the Space Force to the memory of Colonel Thomas Falzerano, commander of the 21st Space Wing at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. As a leader of the Air Force's 5th largest wing, he commanded a workforce of approximately 4,300 space professionals worldwide. We'll now hear from General Raymond and a number of Colonel Falzerano's colleagues in the Air Force and Space Force about the impact he had on all those he worked with.
Как хочешь,